There's a liquid that costs $3 and stops rust permanently. Not slows it down, not delays it, stops it at the molecular level. One coat on bare steel and corrosion never comes back. The United States military used it on warships in 1943. Blacksmiths in medieval England soaked every iron tool in it before winter storage. Indigenous tanners across 4 continents have known about it for over 2,000 years. It bonds to iron oxide and converts active rust into a stable, paintable, waterproof surface in under 60 minutes. No sanding, no grinding, no expensive coatings, no professional equipment, $3 worth of powder mixed with warm water in a plastic bucket. Then, someone in a corporate boardroom did the math. The global auto parts industry generates over $400 billion a year. Rust is the single biggest reason people replace body panels, brake lines, exhaust systems, and suspension components. A $3 solution that eliminates rust permanently is not an innovation to celebrate. It is a threat to neutralize. They did not stop using it because it failed. They stopped talking about it because it worked too well. This is the story of tannic acid, the rust killer that empires trusted and corporations buried. Welcome to Forbidden Camping. If these stories matter to you, the subscribe button and the bell are the best way to make sure this knowledge survives. Here we open the vaults, the industry locked shut. Now let me take you back to where this all begins. To 400 years before the first factory opened, leatherworkers in ancient Rome discovered something entirely by accident. They were soaking raw animal hides in water filled with crushed oak bark to make leather flexible, durable, and waterproof. The process was called tanning, from the Latin word for oak, tannum, and every leather workshop in the empire used massive stone vats filled with this dark brown liquid. But something unexpected happened inside those vats that changed metallurgy forever. Every iron tool that touched the tanning solution stopped corroding. Knives that rusted within days in the humid Roman air stayed clean and sharp. For months after a single soak, iron buckles dropped into the tanning vats by accident came out coated in a thin, dark protective film that resisted both water and salt air. The tanners told the blacksmiths. The blacksmiths told the armorers. And the armorers told the generals. By the 2nd century, Roman legionnaires were treating iron weapons with concentrated oak bark extracts before long campaigns into Gaul and Germania. Military blacksmiths at frontier outposts soaked chainmail in tannin baths after every river crossing, in every rainstorm. Garrison records carved into tablets at Vindolanda, a Roman fort near Hadrian's Wall, reference iron preservation baths using bark solutions. That is a 2,000-year-old military maintenance manual describing the exact same chemistry you're about to learn today. And Rome was not alone. Persian metalworkers used crushed pomegranate rind with 28% tannic acid to protect sword blades from desert humidity. Japanese swordsmiths used fermented persimmon juice on katana blades. West African ironworkers applied shea bark extract to machetes that survived 6 months of tropical monsoon. Every civilization with iron and forests arrived at the same conclusion independently. That is convergent chemistry discovered across thousands of years. Fast forward to 1813 in a cramped laboratory in Paris. A French chemist named Michel Eugène Chevreul isolated tannic acid as a pure compound for the first time in recorded history. He documented its reaction with iron oxide and published his findings in the Annales de Chimie, one of the most respected scientific journals in Europe. For the first time, laboratory science could explain what blacksmiths and tanners had known since antiquity. Tannic acid reacts with iron 3 oxide, the orange flaky compound we call rust, and converts it into iron tannate. Iron tannate is a dark blue-black compound that is completely insoluble in water. It does not flake. It does not spread. It does not weaken the underlying metal, and it bonds permanently to the steel surface at the molecular level. Chevreul described it as a chemical conversion rather than a surface coating. And that distinction matters enormously. A coating sits on top of rust and eventually peels away, exposing the problem again. A conversion transforms the rust itself into the protective barrier. The disease becomes the cure. You apply the solution, the rust converts, and the surface seals itself from the inside out. By 1850, the British Royal Navy began testing tannic acid solutions on iron warship hulls at Portsmouth Harbor, ships treated with tannin. Solutions showed 60% less hull corrosion over 5 years than ships treated with standard lead-based paints, 60% less corrosion with a solution that cost pennies per gallon. The Admiralty expanded testing to anchor chains, rudder assemblies, and below-waterline fittings across the entire fleet. But here is where the story takes a very dark turn. Before I go further, everything I revealed barely scratches the surface. I spent months gathering the survival techniques and suppressed knowledge that industries buried for decades, all inside the complete forbidden camping vault. The solar water heater energy companies do not want you to build. The earth battery that generates free electricity from 2 metals and wet soil. Natural insulation methods indigenous tribes mastered. off-grid power without solar panels, and the tannic acid rust elimination guide for $3, 9 survival guides in one vault. Link in the description. But stay here, because the military science behind this compound is about to make the coatings industry very uncomfortable. In 1939, rust became a military emergency. Sherman tanks arrived in North Africa with corroded tracks, rifles jammed in Pacific humidity. The War Department launched a classified materials program in 1941 at Aberdeen Proving Ground. Researchers tested over 200 anti-corrosion compounds on steel panels and salt spray chambers. The results, declassified in 1947, are devastating to the coatings industry. Tannic acid outperformed every synthetic rust inhibitor. A 4% solution withstood over 1,000 hours of continuous salt spray without failure. The nearest competitor failed at 600 hours. Procurement officers ordered tannic acid in bulk for 3 theaters of war. If you have made it this far, you already know more about rust elimination than 99% of mechanics, engineers, and car enthusiasts combined. Subscribe and share this with someone who deserves to stop throwing money at a problem that Blacksmiths solved 2,000 years ago. Everything the coatings industry buried is inside the forbidden camping vault. 9 guides. Link in the description. Now stay with me, because what comes next is the part they really do not want you to hear. After 1945, the chemical industry had a problem. Companies like DuPont and Sherwin-Williams had invested millions into synthetic rust inhibitors, costing 10 to 50 times more than tannic acid. A powder any mechanic could mix for $3 was an existential threat. The suppression was systematic. By 1952, the coatings industry consolidated into corporations controlling 70% of the rust prevention market. Their revenue model depended on one principle: rust must be a recurring problem, never solved. Every can of rust primer assumes you need another in 18 months. Every undercoating service assumes the customer returns next winter. Every replacement part exists because the original was designed to corrode and be repurchased. The auto parts aftermarket in the United States alone generates over $300 billion in annual revenue. Corrosion-related repairs account for roughly 30% of that staggering total. That is $90 billion flowing through garages, dealerships, and body shops every single year because of rust damage alone. A permanent $3 solution does not fit anywhere inside that economic engine. A permanent solution is not what the aftermarket wants. It is what the aftermarket has worked for 80 years to make sure you never find. Tannic acid cannot be patented because it is a naturally occurring compound found in oak bark, tea leaves, chestnut wood, grape seeds, and dozens of common plant sources. You cannot build a subscription business around a powder that any person can buy in bulk for less than the cost of a fast food meal. You cannot create a service franchise empire selling a treatment that anyone with a bucket and a foam brush can apply in their own driveway. And you absolutely cannot justify a $500 dealership rust protection package when the primary active ingredient can be brewed from a box of black tea bags. So, the industry did what industries always do when a cheap solution threatens expensive revenue. They repackaged it, marked it up, and made sure nobody recognized the original. The commercial rust converter products you see at every hardware store for $15 to $30 per bottle contain tannic acid as their primary active ingredient. Pull up the safety data sheet on any major brand rust converter sold in the United States, and you will find tannic acid listed right there in the chemical composition section. They take $3 worth of naturally occurring powder, dissolve it in petroleum solvents, pour it into a branded bottle with aggressive marketing, and sell it back to you at 10 to 15 times the actual cost. The chemistry inside that bottle is identical to what Roman blacksmiths used. The only difference is the label and the markup. The 1978 Consumer Product Reformulation Guidelines made the disguise even easier. Manufacturers gained the ability to list active ingredients under proprietary trade names rather than standard chemical nomenclature. Tannic acid became proprietary rust conversion compound or stabilized iron chelation formula. Same molecule, new vocabulary, dramatically higher price point. Here's exactly what to do. Purchase food-grade tannic acid powder. A 100-gram bag costs $3 to $5 and treats 40 square feet. Dissolve 4 grams in 100 milliliters of warm water. The liquid turns the color of strong black tea. That is your rust conversion solution. Scrub the rust surface with a wire brush to remove loose material. You do not need bare metal because this converts existing rust. Apply the solution with a foam brush or spray bottle. Within 10 to 15 minutes, the rust changes from orange-brown to dark, blue-black. That color shift is molecular conversion happening in real time. Let it dry completely, 2 to 4 hours. Apply a second coat for maximum protection. The surface is ready for paint, oil, wax, or undercoating. The iron tannate bonds more effectively than bare steel. Let the treated surface air dry completely, which takes approximately 2 to 4 hours, depending on ambient temperature and humidity. Once fully dry, apply a second coat following the same process for maximum conversion depth and protection. After the second coat cures, the surface is ready for any top coat: paint, oil, wax, or undercoating. For camp tools, apply the solution and finish with boiled linseed oil or beeswax. For vehicle, frames and undercarriages follow with rubberized undercoating. For cast iron cookware, apply to rust spots, let convert, then reseason in a 350-degree oven. For outdoor camping gear like tent stakes, lantern frames, and fire grates, brush on the solution before each season and store dry. The treatment lasts through multiple rain and snow cycles without reapplication. 100 grams of tannic acid powder is enough to treat an entire full-size truck frame, a complete set of camp tools, and a full season of cast iron cookware maintenance. Total investment, $3 and roughly 45 minutes of your afternoon. Compare that to a professional automotive rust treatment service charging $300 to $800 for what is due. Fundamentally, the same molecular reaction performed with a fancier spray gun. A mechanic working on trucks in rural Montana began documenting his tannic acid treatments on a 1997 pickup frame in 2019. After 3 consecutive winters of heavy road salt exposure, the treated sections showed absolutely zero rust recurrence, zero new. Corrosion after 3 Montana winters. He posted side-by-side photos online. The contrast was undeniable. Untreated control sections on the same truck frame developed visible new surface rust within 8 months. The chemistry does not wear off because it is not a coating sitting on the surface waiting to be breached. The rust itself has been molecularly transformed into the protective armor. Every civilization that worked iron understood this fundamental truth. Roman legionnaires knew it, standing over oak bark tanning pits on the frontier of empire. Persian swordsmiths knew it, soaking blades in pomegranate water beneath desert stars. Japanese craftsmen knew it, brushing persimmon lacquer onto folded steel in candlelit workshops. West. African ironworkers knew it, painting shea bark extract onto machete blades before the rains came. Your great-grandparents knew it, boiling oak galls in a cast iron kettle on the back porch every autumn. $400 billion in annual auto parts revenue depends on you never learning any of their names. $90 billion in yearly corrosion repair invoices depends on you believing that rust is an inevitable force of nature with no permanent cure. $15 bottles of rebranded tannic acid on hardware store shelves depend on you never once turning the bottle around and reading the ingredients list. But this knowledge did not disappear. It was priced out of your awareness, buried under marketing budgets, and hidden behind proprietary trade names. Chemistry does not care about brand strategy. Iron tannate does not expire, and oak trees have never charged a licensing fee. If this vault changed how you look at the rust forming on your axe head, your truck frame, your camp stove, or your cast iron pan, then subscribe and share this video now. Every single share puts a crack in the wall they spent billions building around. Knowledge that was never theirs to lock away. Every subscription keeps this channel digging deeper into the vaults they thought were sealed forever. The next vault opens soon, and what is inside is the one thing every camper throws away that could generate enough heat to survive a blackout.